I should have seen it coming. Looking back, the signs were always there like the flicker of a dying streetlight just waiting to plunge me into darkness. But I ignored them, clinging to a fantasy of family that had never really existed. My name's Emily. I'm 30, a special education teacher living in Portland. And this is the story of how I finally let go of the people who claimed to love me. It started with a collapse. Literally. I was walking a hyperactive second grader back to his classroom after a particularly intense speech therapy session when my legs buckled beneath me. One second, I was upright, dodging finger paint stains and hallway spills. The next, I was face first on the cold, scuffed tiles. My mind blinked in and out, fragments of fluorescent lights echoing footsteps, and the distant ring of a school bell blending into a nauseating blur. When I came to, a nurse was crouching beside me, her face drawn tight with concern. "Hey, can you hear me? You're going to be okay. Just breathe." It turned out I'd been running on fumes for months. A cocktail of chronic stress, dehydration, and exhaustion finally catching up with me. They wheeled me out on a stretcher, my vision still spotty, my hands trembling and my mind struggling to piece together how I had let myself fall this far. The paramedics kept asking for an emergency contact, but every name that flitted through my head felt like a cruel joke. Family. What family? At the hospital, they hooked me up to IVs, the cold drip of saline seeping into my veins, slowly coaxing me back from the edge. I lay there, the sterile beeps of machines keeping time with my shallow breaths, waiting for a message, a call, anything. I had shot off a quick, shaky text to my parents and my brother Kyle in the ER. "Hey, I'm in the hospital, collapsed at work, just tired. Love you guys." And then waited. Hours passed. My phone screen stayed dark. No buzzing, no missed calls. I tried not to think about it, focused instead on the steady hum of the fluorescent lights above the antiseptic bite of the hospital air, the scratchy roughness of the thin blue blanket covering me. But it was impossible to ignore the gnawing void of silence. 3 hours later, my phone buzzed. I fumbled for it, heart lurching with a misplaced burst of hope. It was Kyle. Just a single solitary message, a thumbs-up emoji, followed by, "Hey, can you cover my phone bill this month?" I stared at the screen, the tiny cartoon hand floating in a sea of white pixels, and felt something inside me snap. I had always known on some level that my family's love came with strings attached, tangled, suffocating threads of obligation and guilt. But this was different. This was clarity, the final crack that shattered the fragile, hopeful glass house I'd been living in. For 3 days, I lay in that hospital bed, my mind replaying every instance I had put them first, bent over backward, to be the supportive daughter, the reliable sister, the financial crutch they leaned on without a second thought. I had paid for my brother's rent when he decided college wasn't for him, covered countless bills when my parents' latest business venture inevitably flopped, and even postponed my own dreams to help them out of one financial pit after another. They had me hooked, and I let them. I let them make me feel like it was my duty, my responsibility to carry the weight of their choices. I had let them drain me dry piece by piece, excuse by excuse, until my body finally gave out, screaming for the rest I had so stubbornly denied it. When I finally checked out of the hospital, I walked into my tiny apartment, the one I had barely been able to afford while covering my family's endless expenses, and just stood there. The air felt thicker, heavier, the shadows in the corners deeper. I closed my eyes and let the silence sink in like an old friend wrapping me in a familiar, if slightly suffocating embrace. I made a cup of tea, the steam rising in lazy curls, and sank into my thrift store couch, its springs groaning in protest beneath my weight. I pulled out my phone, scrolled through months of ignored texts, forgotten calls, and hastily scribbled notes about bills and rent payments. I opened my notes app and typed one simple sentence: "They don't love me. They just need me." It should have hurt, that realization, but it didn't. Not anymore. I was too empty, too spent, my well of emotions run dry. All I felt was a cold, detached certainty that I couldn't keep doing this, couldn't keep pretending that their love was anything more than transactional. That night, for the first time in years, I turned off my phone and sat in the dark, listening to the slow, steady hum of my refrigerator. It was a small act of rebellion, a tiny, defiant stand against the chaos I had let them drag me into. I didn't sleep much, my mind too wired, too raw, but when the first weak threads of morning light seeped through my blinds, I felt something I hadn't in years. Peace. And as the days stretched into weeks, I found myself clinging to that feeling, refusing to let it slip through my fingers again. I started making plans, real, tangible plans, for my own life, for a future that didn't revolve around their needs and demands. I had no idea what was coming next, but I knew one thing for certain: I wasn't going back. After that hospital stay, I did something I hadn't done in years. I put myself first. It felt strange, selfish, even like trying to walk in shoes 2 sizes too small, but I pushed through. I started setting boundaries, tiny at first, like not picking up my mom's endless calls during work, or letting Kyle's requests for just a little extra rent slide into my unread messages. A week after my release, my mom finally called. I hesitated before picking up, fingers hovering over the screen as I stared at her name. "Emily, honey, we've been so worried. We heard you were in the hospital. Why didn't you call?" "I did," I said, forcing my voice to stay steady. "I texted you from the ER. Oh well, you know how busy things have been. Your father's back has been acting up and Kyle's had his hands full trying to figure out his next steps. It's just been chaos." She sighed, the kind of long, exaggerated breath that meant she was building up to a request. "Anyway, now that you're better, we were wondering if you could help us out. The electricity bill's due and your dad's freelance gig fell through again. Just a little help to get us by, sweetheart." I closed my eyes, fingers tightening around my phone. There it was, the same old script, the same worn-out lines I had been rehearsing my whole life. "I can't," I said, my own voice sounding foreign, stiff, like I was speaking through a stranger. She paused, clearly not expecting that. "What do you mean you can't?" "I mean, I can't keep doing this. I just got out of the hospital, Mom. I need to take care of myself for once." The silence stretched thin, a tightrope ready to snap. Then her voice came back sharper now. "I raised you better than this, Emily. Family supports each other. We've always been there for you." I let out a bitter laugh before I could stop myself. "Have you, though? Because it feels like I'm always the one doing the supporting," she sputtered, thrown off by my sudden backbone. "That's not fair. We've sacrificed so much for you. You don't even understand." I almost felt bad for her, for the way she twisted reality into a story where she and Dad were the selfless heroes, struggling against a world that didn't appreciate their sacrifices. But I had no energy left to argue, no patience to untangle the web of guilt and obligation they had spun around me. "I'm sorry, Mom. I can't. I need to rest. Take care." And before she could muster a comeback, I hung up, my heart racing, my palms slick with sweat. I dropped the phone onto my bed and sank down beside it, my pulse hammering in my ears. I half expected a follow-up call, a text, maybe even a dramatic voicemail. But my phone remained eerily silent. I had cut off the supply, and the silence that followed felt like the first breath of clean air after surfacing from a deep, dark lake. For the next few days, I braced for the inevitable fallout, the emotional backlash I knew would come. I imagined my mom pacing the living room, fuming, my dad muttering about ungrateful children, Kyle whining about how I had abandoned him. But none of that came. Just a void, a blank space where their constant demands and passive-aggressive texts had once filled my world. And for the first time in years, I felt something like freedom. I started small, cooking real meals instead of instant noodles, letting myself sleep in on weekends without feeling guilty, even signing up for a yoga class I had been eyeing for months. It felt like reclaiming little pieces of myself, fragments of a person I had long forgotten. Then one evening, as I was folding laundry and listening to an old playlist I hadn't touched in years, my phone lit up with a message from Kyle. "Hey, can you call me? It's important." I stared at the screen, my thumb hovering over the call button. I took a deep breath, closed my eyes, and hit dial. "Hey, sis," he said, his voice carefully neutral, like someone walking on thin ice. "Look, I know you've been going through a lot, but I really need your help. The car payment's coming up, and if I miss it, they're going to repossess it. Just a couple $100. I'll pay you back, I swear." I leaned back against the wall, the cool plaster pressing into my shoulder blades, grounding me. "Kyle, I've been paying that car bill for months. I can't keep doing it." "But I'm your brother," he shot back, the carefully constructed mask of patience slipping. "You're my sister. You're supposed to help me." I closed my eyes, felt my pulse slow, my breathing steady. "I know, but I'm not just your personal ATM, Kyle. I'm tired. I'm done." He started to protest, his voice rising, the old script kicking back in, but I didn't give him the chance. "I have to go," I said, cutting him off. "Take care of yourself." I ended the call before he could find the words to guilt me into another handout. I dropped my phone onto the couch, feeling the tension drain from my body, leaving me strangely hollow but lighter somehow, like I had just set down a burden I didn't even realize I had been carrying. I took a deep breath, the air cool and sharp in my lungs, and let it out slowly. I had no idea what was coming next. No clear picture of a future without their demands shadowing my every move, but I knew one thing. I was done being their safety net, their crutch, their go-to problem solver. I was done. It didn't take long for the cracks to show. Once I cut off the money flow, the texts started rolling in. At first, they were the usual passive-aggressive jabs, thinly veiled attempts to reel me back in. "Emily, it's your mother. We just want to know you're okay. You're not answering your brother and he's worried. Family sticks together, remember?" Then came the guilt bombs. "Your father had to cancel his doctor's appointment because we can't cover the copay. But I'm sure you're too busy to care." I deleted each one without responding, my resolve hardening with every swipe. They had pulled this trick so many times, their desperate pleas for help dressed up as loving concern, but I wasn't biting this time. I had my own life to rebuild. Then one rainy Saturday afternoon, my dad called. I hesitated, the phone vibrating in my hand like a ticking bomb. I considered letting it ring out, but something inside me, some old conditioned reflex, made me pick up. "Emily." His voice crackled through the speaker, tinged with the weary frustration of a man who had grown used to his daughter picking up the pieces. "What's going on with you?" "Your mother's been in tears for days. We don't understand why you're acting like this." I closed my eyes, leaning back into the lumpy couch that I still hadn't bothered to replace. "Dad? I've just been tired. I needed a break." He sighed, the kind of long, exaggerated breath that felt like a punch to the gut. "We're family, Emily. We stick together. You know that. We raised you to be responsible, to care for your own." There it was. The script, the same tired lines that had kept me chained to their needs for years. I felt my jaw tighten, my grip on the phone turning my knuckles white. "I know, Dad, but I can't keep being the one holding it all together. I'm exhausted. I ended up in the hospital, remember?" He paused, and for a brief, foolish moment, I thought he might actually say something comforting, something that acknowledged the toll this had taken on me. But then he spoke, and my heart sank. "Well, that's what family's for, right? To pick each other up when we fall. And right now, we need you, Emily. Your brother's struggling. Your mom's a mess. We can't do this without you." I felt the last thread of my patience snap, a cold clarity washing over me. They didn't care about my well-being. They never had. To them, I was just a lifeline, a source of financial stability wrapped in the thin guise of family loyalty. "I can't," I said, my voice steady but hollow. "I can't keep doing this, Dad. I need to take care of myself for once." Silence. For a long moment, the only sound was the faint hum of my refrigerator, the patter of rain against my window. Then he cleared his throat, his tone hardening. "Well, if that's how you feel," he said, his voice dropping into that cold, disappointed register that had haunted my childhood, "then maybe we need to rethink what family means to us." I almost laughed at the absurdity of it, the sheer nerve. Rethink family. After years of taking and taking until I had nothing left to give. "I guess we do," I replied, my voice flat, drained of the warmth I had once wasted on them. I hung up before he could respond, tossing the phone onto the couch and staring up at the ceiling, my pulse thrumming in my ears. I felt a strange mixture of relief and grief, a hollow ache where my family's love should have been. That night, as I lay in bed staring at the cracks in my ceiling, I replayed that conversation over and over, dissecting every word, every tone shift, every pregnant pause. I knew I had done the right thing. I had finally drawn a line in the sand. But it still hurt. It hurt to realize that the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally had only ever seen me as a means to an end. The next morning, my phone lit up with a new message, this time from Kyle. I almost deleted it on reflex, but curiosity got the better of me. "You really messed things up, Em. Mom's been crying all night, and Dad's been pacing the house like a madman. I hope you're happy." I let out a bitter chuckle, my thumb hovering over the reply button. I typed a dozen different responses before finally settling on a single word: good. I hit send, tossed my phone onto the bed, and walked into the kitchen to make myself a cup of coffee. The machine sputtered to life, filling the small apartment with the warm, comforting scent of fresh brew. I leaned against the counter, the ceramic mug heavy in my hands, and took a slow, deliberate sip. I had no idea what was coming next, no blueprint for a life without their demands. But for the first time in as long as I could remember, I felt something like peace creeping into the edges of my mind. Maybe, just maybe, I could finally learn to be okay without them. A few weeks passed, and the silence from my family grew heavier, like a storm building on the horizon. It felt strange, unsettling even to go this long without their constant requests and passive-aggressive reminders. For once, my phone wasn't buzzing with demands for money, last-minute favors, or guilt-laced pleas for support. It was like my life had suddenly shifted into a quieter, less chaotic gear, and I was still getting used to the calm. But then, just as I started to believe I had finally broken free, the calls started up again. This time, it was my mom. I ignored the first few, her name flashing across my screen like a ghost I had been trying to outrun. But she was relentless, her persistence like a slow, steady drip wearing away at my newfound peace. Finally, late one Friday evening, I picked up my heart already bracing for the emotional ambush I knew was coming. "Emily," she said, her voice small and fragile, the tone she always used when she wanted something. "We need to talk. Please just hear me out." I leaned against the kitchen counter, staring at the streaks of rain on my window, the streetlights outside glowing in the misty darkness. "What is it, Mom?" She hesitated, the line crackling with the weight of 1,000 unspoken grievances. "Your father's not doing well. His back's worse and the doctor says he might need surgery. We don't have the money for it, Em. We need your help." I closed my eyes, my fingers tightening around the cool edge of the counter. Here it was, the real reason she was calling. Not to check on me, not to apologize, but to remind me of my place in their twisted family dynamic, the designated fixer, the reliable one, the daughter who never said no. "I'm sorry to hear that," I said, forcing my voice to stay calm even as my pulse raced. "But I can't help you right now. I've got my own expenses to cover." "Emily," she said, her voice breaking the sound, cutting through me like a dull, rusty blade. "We're your parents. We took care of you, sacrificed so much for you, and now you're just abandoning us." I let out a slow, controlled breath, my grip on the counter tightening until my knuckles ached. "You're not listening, Mom. I can't keep doing this. I've been supporting you for years, paying your bills, covering Kyle's rent, putting my own life on hold to keep you afloat. I ended up in the hospital because of it. I need to take care of myself now." The silence that followed was thick, suffocating. I could almost picture her sitting in the dimly lit living room, her hand clenched around her phone, her face twisted in that familiar mix of frustration and disbelief. "How can you be so heartless?" she finally whispered, her voice trembling with the weight of her carefully cultivated martyrdom. "After everything we've done for you, you're just going to cut us off, just like that." I felt a sharp, bitter laugh rise in my throat, but I swallowed it back, my jaw clenching so hard my teeth ached. "I'm not being heartless, Mom. I'm just choosing myself for once." She let out a sharp, choked sob, the kind designed to stab straight into the heart, to pull every ounce of guilt from the listener. "I never thought you'd turn on us like this, Emily. I thought you were better than that." I bit down on my tongue, the metallic taste of blood flooding my mouth. I felt the old, familiar guilt creeping in, the reflex to apologize, to cave, to give in to her demands just to stop the pain. But I held firm, my mind replaying the long, empty hours I had spent in that hospital bed, waiting for a message, a call, anything that would have shown they cared. "I'm sorry, Mom," I said, my voice coming out colder than I intended. "But I can't do this anymore. I hope you figure things out." And before she could find another weapon in her arsenal of emotional manipulation, I hung up, my fingers trembling as I set my phone down on the counter. I stood there for a long time, staring at the rain-streaked glass, my reflection faint and ghostly in the darkened window. I felt hollow, like someone had scooped out my insides and left me a fragile shell, brittle and ready to crack. But beneath the numbness, beneath the lingering ache of a severed connection, I felt something else. A tiny spark of something I hadn't felt in years. Freedom. The next morning, I woke up to a dozen missed calls and a string of frantic texts from Kyle. I ignored them all, my resolve hardening with each ignored message. I made myself a strong cup of coffee, the bitter aroma filling my small kitchen, and sat by the window, letting the cool morning air wash over me. I didn't know what came next. How to rebuild a life that had been so tightly intertwined with theirs. How to find a version of myself that wasn't defined by their constant needs and demands. But for the first time in years, I felt like I had a choice, like I could breathe, without the crushing weight of their expectations pressing down on my chest. I took a long, slow sip of my coffee, the steam curling up to kiss my face, and let the silence settle around me, thick and comforting like a warm, worn blanket. I wasn't their savior anymore. I wasn't their crutch. I was just me, and for the first time in as long as I could remember, that felt like enough. The quiet should have felt comforting. I had spent years dreaming about a life free from their constant demands, their endless pleas for support, their carefully constructed web of guilt and obligation. But as the days stretched into weeks, the silence started to feel like an open wound, a raw, aching reminder of everything I had lost. Or maybe everything I had never really had in the first place. Then one evening, as I sat on my couch, a cup of tea cooling in my hands, my phone rang. I almost didn't answer, my thumb hovering over the decline button, but something made me pick up. Emily, my dad's voice crackled through the line, low and strained. Your mother, she's in the hospital. My heart seized in my chest, the room tilting around me as his words sank in. What happened? He hesitated, the line crackling with the weight of 100 unspoken grievances. It's her heart. Stress, they said. She collapsed this morning. They're running tests, but it doesn't look good. I felt my breath catch in my throat, my pulse thundering in my ears. This was the nightmare scenario, the thing I had always feared. That my refusal to keep carrying them, to keep being their lifeline, would somehow come back to haunt me. Which hospital, I managed to choke out, already grabbing my keys, my mind racing through the worst-case scenarios. He gave me the name, his voice trembling, the carefully cultivated confidence he had always wielded like a weapon reduced to a thin, fragile whisper. Please, Emily. She's asking for you. I barely registered my own response, the hurried promises to be there as soon as possible before I hung up and stumbled out the door, my heart pounding in my chest like a trapped bird. The drive to the hospital was a blur, the city lights smearing into long, jagged streaks of white and red. As I sped through intersections, my mind replaying every cold, dismissive conversation I had had with my mother over the past few months. When I finally burst through the hospital doors, the fluorescent lights stabbing at my eyes, my chest tight with a mixture of dread and guilt, I found my dad slumped in a plastic chair in the waiting room, his face pale, his hands trembling. Dad, I said, my voice sharp, frantic. Where is she? He looked up, his eyes hollow, rimmed with dark circles I had never seen before. Room 203. They're still running tests. I didn't wait for him to say anything else. I turned and half ran down the hallway, the sterile smell of antiseptic stinging my nose, my sneakers squeaking against the polished linoleum floors. I felt my pulse in my throat, each step echoing in my ears, the sound of my own breathing harsh and ragged. When I reached her room, I hesitated, my hand frozen on the cold metal handle. I took a deep breath, bracing myself for whatever scene awaited me on the other side, and then pushed the door open. She looked small, fragile, her face pale against the stark white of the hospital pillow. Her hair spread out in thin gray strands that seemed to cling to the fabric like a ghostly halo. Her eyes flicked toward me as I stepped inside, her lips parting in a weak, relieved smile. Emily, she whispered, her voice a thin, trembling wisp of sound. You came. I felt something crack inside me, a sharp, splintering pain that radiated through my chest, stealing my breath. I stepped closer, my legs unsteady, my hands trembling. Of course I came, I said, my voice breaking on the last word. What happened? She let out a small, shaky sigh, her eyes fluttering closed for a moment before she looked back at me. It's my heart. The doctor said, too much stress. They think it might be serious. I felt my knees weaken, my pulse roaring in my ears. I reached for the edge of her bed, my fingers gripping the cold metal railing, the sharp, sterile scent of disinfectant filling my lungs. I'm sorry, she whispered, her voice breaking, her eyes filling with tears. I didn't mean to push you away. I didn't mean to make you feel like you were only good for what you could give us. I felt my throat tighten, my vision blurring. I had dreamed of this moment, of her finally admitting what she had put me through, of her acknowledging the years of emotional blackmail and quiet manipulation. But now that it was happening, now that she was lying there, frail and broken, her heart literally giving out from the weight of her own choices, I felt no satisfaction, no sense of victory. Only a hollow, aching emptiness. I'm sorry too. I whispered, my voice trembling, my heart shattering with every word. I needed to breathe. I needed to live my own life. She closed her eyes, a single tear slipping down her cheek, her lips trembling as she whispered, I know, sweetheart. I know. I felt my own tears break free, then hot and bitter streaking down my cheeks as I reached for her hand, my fingers closing around hers, thin and cold and trembling. I clung to her, my heart breaking, my mind replaying every harsh word, every bitter argument, every moment I had felt like a stranger in my own family. We sat there in that sterile, too bright room, the machines around us beeping and whirring, the steady mechanical sounds of life and death intertwining. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like maybe, just maybe, we had a chance to be something other than broken. But as I sat there, her frail hand clutched in mine, the weight of her words settling into my bones, I realized something with a clarity that felt like a knife to the gut. Some wounds never really heal, no matter how tightly you try to stitch them closed. The days after my mother's hospital stay blurred together in a haze of guilt, confusion, and tentative hope. I visited her every day, sitting by her bedside as the nurses shuffled in and out, adjusting tubes, checking monitors, whispering updates that I barely heard. My dad was always there, slumped in the corner like a shadow, his face a mask of exhaustion and quiet desperation. She looked better each day, the color slowly returning to her cheeks, her voice growing stronger, her grip on my hand less like the fragile, ghostly touch of a memory, and more like the firm, reassuring squeeze of the mother I had always wanted. But beneath the surface, I could feel the cracks, the tiny hairline fractures in our relationship that no amount of whispered apologies or tearful bedside confessions could fully mend. One afternoon, as I sat beside her, picking at the fraying edge of my sweater, she reached out, her thin, pale fingers wrapping around mine. "Emily," she said, her voice quiet but steady, "when I get out of here, I want to make things right. I want us to be a real family again." I felt my heart tighten, a cold, sharp pain spreading through my chest. I looked at her, the faint, hopeful smile on her lips, the way her eyes shone with a fragile, desperate hope, and felt my resolve waver. "I want that too," I whispered, my voice breaking the words slipping from my mouth before I could stop them. She smiled, a soft, relieved sigh escaping her lips. "Good, we can start over. Leave the past behind. Be there for each other like a family should." I forced a smile, nodding, but even as the words left my lips, I felt a cold, sinking dread settle in my stomach. Because I knew deep down that things would never really change. That the same toxic patterns, the same cycles of guilt and obligation that had drained me dry for years would only creep back in, seeping into the cracks like water through a broken dam. When she was finally discharged, I helped my dad load her into the car, his hands trembling as he fumbled with the seatbelt, his face drawn and lined with worry. I followed them home, my heart heavy, my mind spinning with doubts, my chest tight with the old familiar fear of being pulled back into their orbit. They insisted I stay for dinner that night, my mom leaning heavily on my dad as they shuffled inside her frail frame, swaying like a tree in a stiff breeze. I forced a smile, set my keys down on the hallway table, and followed them into the living room, my pulse quickening as the old, suffocating familiarity of their house wrapped around me like a shroud. As I helped set the table, my mom eased into her old armchair, her face pale, her breath coming in short, shallow gasps. My dad hovered nearby, his eyes flicking nervously between us, his hands twitching like he was trying to grasp something just out of reach. We ate in near silence, the clink of forks against plates, the only sound breaking the heavy, oppressive quiet. I picked at my food, my stomach churning, the small, cramped kitchen suddenly feeling too tight, too close, like the walls were closing in around me. Then, as I reached for my glass, my dad cleared his throat, his gaze flicking nervously between me and my mom. "Emily," he said, his voice strained, his hands twisting in his lap. "We've been talking and, well, we're in a bit of a financial bind. Your mom's medical bills have really piled up, and with her out of work, we're struggling to keep up with the mortgage." I felt my pulse spike, a cold, bitter anger flaring to life in my chest. Of course this was coming. The apology, the promises, the tearful bedside confessions. All just a prelude to another demand, another reach into my already strained bank account. I set my fork down, my hands trembling, my heart racing. "I can't," I said, my voice sharp, the words cutting through the air like a blade. "I can't keep doing this. I told you, I need to take care of myself now." My dad's face twisted, his eyes narrowing, his lips pressing into a thin, bitter line. "So that's it then. You're just going to abandon us after everything we've done for you." I felt my throat tighten, my jaw clench, my hands ball into fists in my lap. "Don't," I whispered, my voice shaking, my pulse roaring in my ears. "Don't try to guilt me into this. I've given you everything. My time, my money, my peace of mind. I ended up in the hospital because of you." My mom flinched, her eyes filling with tears, her hands trembling in her lap. "Emily, please. We're your family. We need you." I stood up, the chair scraping loudly against the worn, stained linoleum floor, the sound sharp and jarring in the tense, suffocating quiet. "I need me." I snapped my chest, heaving, my hands shaking. "I need my life back. I need my freedom. I can't keep being your crutch. I grabbed my keys, my heart pounding, my breath coming in short, shallow gasps as I stumbled toward the door, my mind spinning, my vision blurring with tears. "Emily," my mom called after me, her voice breaking, her words twisted and strained, her desperation sharp and cutting. "Don't walk out on us. Don't you dare walk out on your family." I froze my hand on the doorknob, my pulse racing, my mind screaming at me to leave, to run, to finally break free from their grasp. I took a deep breath, my hands trembling, my heart pounding in my chest like a trapped bird. "I'm not abandoning you," I whispered, my voice breaking, my tears spilling over my breath, coming in ragged, painful gasps. "I'm saving myself." And with that, I stepped through the door, the cold night air hitting me like a slap to the face, sharp and bracing, shocking me back to reality. I stumbled down the steps, my keys clinking in my trembling hand, my mind spinning, my heart shattering. I drove home in a daze, the streetlights smearing into long, jagged streaks of white and red, my vision blurring with tears, my breath coming in short, desperate gasps. When I finally stumbled through my front door, I collapsed onto my couch, my body shaking, my chest heaving, my mind racing. But as the hours passed, as the darkness of my apartment wrapped around me, I felt something shift. A tiny flickering spark of hope, of freedom, of a life finally reclaimed. I had walked away. I had chosen myself. And for the first time in as long as I could remember, I felt like maybe, just maybe, I could finally be okay. Story 2. I was in excruciating misery the day my sister made her demand for my house, updating the walls in the living area for her engagement supper. I still chuckle in that hollow manner at the irony. Your chest hurts from that. I'm Nicole, and I've dedicated the last 5 years of my life to preventing this property from becoming just another foreclosure crisis statistic. Roslyn, my younger sister, was sharing stories on Instagram from Cabo at the time. To pay my mortgage, I was living off of ramen and working 2 jobs. There was nothing left of my father's gambling habit. "Nicole." Rosalind's voice cut through my focus as the front door banged. "Why don't you have on some clothes yet? In an hour, everyone will be here." Wiping perspiration from my brow, I descended from the stepladder and completed some necessary touch-ups on the wall. "The wall doesn't matter to anyone." Rosalind dismissively waved her immaculately manicured hand. The light fell on her engagement ring. "It's probably worth more than my whole closet. The parents of Easton will be arriving. This property must have a flawless appearance." I suppressed an answer about how I kept this home looking flawless all the time. I feigned a smile instead. "I need 20 minutes to change and take a shower." As I was zipping up my dress, the doorbell rang. My roommate and best friend Trinity peered into my room. "Your parents are present. Do you want my hero to run interference?" I gave my lips a swift sweep. "How awful is it? Already your dad is griping about the thermostat. Additionally, your mom is moving the appetizers I laid out." "Fantastic." I inhaled deeply before going downstairs. "Our Nicole is there." Mom kissed my cheek and whispered that. "The home looks darling." She hesitated, looking for criticism. "You did your best, though. Dad never even raised his head from his phone. This place is extremely hot. It's a waste of money." "It's also good to see you," I whispered, but they were now swooning over Easton, who had just come with his parents and Rosalind. The actual supper was agonizing. As everyone talked about wedding plans and future grandchildren, I sat there getting my dinner. I noticed my dad's fingers twitching as he continued to discuss investment options, and I knew too much about his gambling past. Rosalind cleared her throat after that. "We wanted to talk to you about something important, Nicole." There was silence in the room. I saw my parents look at each other. "As you are aware," Rosalind went on, "I want to begin our lives with Easton. Somewhere historic, someplace remarkable." I felt sick to my stomach. They wouldn't, of course, but I could see where this was headed. "We believe it would be fantastic." Mom got right in. "If you presented your sister with the house as a wedding gift." The fork clattered against the plate as it fell out of my hand. "Please pardon me." "That's a great idea," Dad said sternly. "You're single and career-focused. Rosalind requires a suitable family residence, a decent family house." Slowly, I repeated. "Do you mean the house I've been paying for since I was 22, and that I kept from going into foreclosure?" Rosalind gave an eye roll. "Avoid being theatrical." We all pitched in. Everyone was helpful. I got up so quickly that my chair brushed the floor. When I had to leave college to make ends meet while working 60-hour weeks, where was your assistance, Nicole now? The tone of Mom's voice became the sickly, sweet tone she used to attempt to control me. We are related. Family members help one another. Family. Even I thought it sounded weird when I laughed. Is that the name we are using for this? Trinity lightly stroked my arm. Let's all take a breath, perhaps. There's no need, I remarked abruptly. I'll give it some thought. I felt nauseous at the relief on their expressions. They believed they had triumphed. As usual. Already displaying Pinterest boards on her phone to provide Easton's mother with remodeling ideas, Rosalind grinned. After everyone had gone later that evening, I sat by myself in my kitchen and gazed over the business card that my friend Luke, a realtor, had given me months prior, just in case I had preserved it. Only for a second. Such like this. As I dialed his phone, my hands remained steady. Nicole here. Luke, do you recall our discussion about selling? I'm prepared. Trinity was standing in the doorway when I hung up. Are you all right? No, I was honest. However, I will be. As they took and stole something from me, I glanced about at the walls I had painted, the flooring I had redone, and the life I had created, hardened much like concrete. My house was what they desired. All right. However, they were going to discover the consequences of pushing the family doormat too far. The fragrance of coffee and new printer paper filled Luke's workspace. With practiced efficiency, he laid out the papers on his desk, indicating each line of signatures. The sale is final once you sign these, he continued. We may close in 48 hours since the investors are providing cash. Do you have complete confidence in this? I grabbed the pen. What is the amount? For 25. Once again, sufficient to pay off the mortgage and leave with a respectable margin. I kept my hand over the page. 5 years of my existence, reduced to a page's worth of numbers. I reflected on all of the overtime, missed vacations, and credit card debt I had accrued in order to maintain this property. I said, do it, and began to sign. Trinity's automobile was waiting outside. It's finished, though. My seatbelt was fastened. On Thursday, they take possession. Nicole, she took hold of my hand. There's no turning back after you've done this. Family isn't what your family is. I withdrew my hand. They simply become quite accustomed to taking advantage of me. It buzzed on my phone. Rosalind texted to say she was getting engagement pictures done at the home tomorrow. Ensure that the lawn has been mowed. I presented the message to Trinity. She gave a low whistle. The boldness. Oh, it improves. I read through other texts. The reception is already being planned by Mom. My dad is considering turning my home office into a nursery. Do they genuinely believe you will give it to them? They do, don't they? They don't believe, they anticipate. I passed by the house on my way to work the following morning. Rosalind, wearing a flowing white dress, stood on my front porch as a photographer set up equipment. Like a Hollywood producer rearranging potted plants I'd spent years growing, Mom set the setting. Mom insisted on keeping the Sunday breakfast ritual, so I continued to drive. Amid wedding magazines, Rosalind presided over the neighborhood cafe. She said that the caterers want a final number. You're not bringing anyone, are you, Nicole? You'll just be seated at the singles table. I answered, stirring my coffee. Actually, I may not be able to make it. There was silence at the table. You might not make it. What do you mean? Mom could have frozen hell with her voice. Your sister is getting married at my place, Rosalind went on. Where, at this stage, you are really simply a home-sitter. Dad put his newspaper down. Nicole, stop giving your sister the attitude she needs. I must leave. I threw money on the table and got up. Work-related items. On a Sunday. Mom laughed. When did you start, since I am responsible for paying for everything myself? The words sounded harsher than they should have. A pair looked across from the adjacent table. Sorting through boxes of old pictures I had taken from the home took up the remainder of my day at Trinity's apartment. The majority were yellowed pictures of festivities I missed at work and family holidays I had never taken. Then 3 years ago, I discovered a handwritten message hidden within an album. In his sloppy handwriting, Dad discussed with Jerry how selling the house would generate enough cash to pay off bills. Nicole doesn't have to find out just yet. My hands began to shake. While I was dying myself to rescue it, they had attempted to sell it behind my back. Are you all right? From the kitchen, Trinity called. I showed the message to her. In any case, they were planning to sell it. Following all that I did. Jesus. She gave it 2 readings. These folks are no longer worth defending Nicole. I took out my phone and sent Luke a text. Everything remains scheduled for Thursday. He responded immediately. Ready. At 9 a.m., the new owners are performing their last walkthrough. I needed to finish one more family meal. Another evening of feigning that mom got takeaway because she was too busy planning the wedding to prepare meals. As Rosalind went over her restoration ideas, we sat around my dining room table, which I had refinished myself. She said that the partition separating the dining room and kitchen must be removed. It's really out of date. Bearing load? I mumbled. What, nothing. I put my house keys on the table and got up. Everyone stared at them in silence. Mom's eyes filled with tears. Oh dear, I knew you would act morally. Dad nodded approvingly, finally displaying some family devotion. Grinning, Rosalind grabbed the keys. I knew you would change your mind. Baby Easton, tonight is the best time for us to begin packing. I made my way to the door, stopping only to text Luke one more time. It will take place tomorrow. I could hear them preparing, rejoicing, and vulture-like dividing up my life behind me. They were unaware of what was about to happen. Karma occasionally requires a little encouragement. And Karma was arriving with moving trucks and legal paperwork at precisely 9 a.m. tomorrow. All the way home, I grinned. For our final family meal at my place, I got there early. Watching them dig their own graves with every entitled statement tonight was more important than the moving trucks that would arrive tomorrow. Mom rearranged my spice rack for the 10th time while rushing around my kitchen as if she already owned it. These expired months ago, Nicole. How do you manage to live this way? I get by? I looked at my phone. Luke confirmed the schedule for tomorrow in 7 scriptures. Rosalind rushed in carrying 3 swatches of paint. For the living room, I'm considering sage green. The hue is pretty simple right now. I had painted those walls myself for 12 hours. Roz, do anything you want. Dad had already wandered in. I'm 3 beers deep. He grabbed one of the samples of paint. It appears pricey. Nicole, I take it you're paying for the renovations because you're not helping with the wedding. Easton showed up with a bottle of champagne before I could reply. It's time to rejoice. The first portion of our wedding present was recently transferred by my parents. We can get started on the kitchen makeover you've been dreaming of, Roz. Excellent. Rosalind gave a hand clap. At last, we can get rid of those terrible countertops. After 3 months of putting in extra hours, I built the countertops myself. Trinity, who had demanded to be present to offer moral assistance, got my attention from the other side of the room. She nodded subtly at me. Dinner is prepared, Mom declared as she brought a dish to the table. Nicole, I take it we're utilizing the good china? Your grandmother's set. You've already packed it away. To keep myself safe, I grinned. Dad held up his drink. Maybe we should make it official. To Nicole for doing something properly at last. And thanks to Rosalind for providing this site with the much-needed makeover. Everybody clinked their glasses. I looked at my watch and took a sip of water. The show is 12 hours away. Rosalind leaped up. Oh, I nearly forgot. The location of the tent setup must be known by the wedding coordinator. I'm thinking about your garden right now. The day after I paid off Dad's gambling debts, I planted the garden. Every flower was purchased with borrowed funds and worked tirelessly. That sounds great, I answered. Mom smiled. You see, this is the essence of family, helping one another. Let's not drag this out, Nicole. I know you've been tough about it, but it's good to see you finally accept your sister's happiness. I cut you off. You achieved your goal. Sis, don't be resentful. Rosalind gave an eye roll. It's not pretty. Additionally, you are welcome to visit at any time. When we go on vacation, we could even let you house it. I sneaked upstairs after supper while everyone else was preoccupied with wedding preparations. The majority of the boxes in my bedroom were already labeled packed and prepared for tomorrow. The final family portrait, in which we all appeared content before Dad's gambling and before Mom's deception, was on my bed. Rosalind was the golden child before that. Behind me, I heard movement. In the doorway appeared Trinity. There is nothing that you owe them. I am aware. This still stings even after I put the picture face down. We both jumped when there was a crash from downstairs. My beloved reading chair was being dragged toward the front door by Rosalind and Dad when we hurried down. What are you doing? I insisted. The new aesthetic isn't compatible with it. As she struggled with the chair, Rosalind spoke. It will be added to the pile of donations. While figuring out how to salvage this house, I spent many nights in the chair that I had saved from a thrift store and had holstered by hand. Something broke inside of me. Give up. I sounded like ice. Set it down. Oh, Rosalind whimpered. Hurry up. Avoid being theatrical. Put it down, I said. They genuinely listened, perhaps because of my tone or something in my face. Nicole, Mom's mediator voice began to be used. Your sister is only making an effort. To what end? Take more. Destroy more. I approached the chair and ran my fingers over its shabby arm. What's humorous to you? Do you all believe that tomorrow will be this significant new beginning, fresh starts? Your ideal little dream. Dad scowled. What is the intended meaning of that? I took one final look at my phone. The screen lit with Luke's message. Everything is scheduled for 900 a.m. Nothing. Sweetly, I replied, simply thinking aloud. Everyone, you need to sleep. It will be a fascinating day tomorrow. You see, Mom put her hand on my arm. I knew you would change your mind. After all, blood is thicker than water. Her touch on my arm caught my attention. Then Rosalind's arrogant attitude at Dad's contemptuous look. A footnote in their story of the ideal family after 5 years of hardship. Mom, you're correct. I took her hand away gently. Water is not as thick as blood, and you will all discover just how thick it is tomorrow. They chuckled, presumably assuming I was making some awkward toast. However, Trinity caught my look and promptly excused us from going. She inquired in the vehicle. Are you prepared for tomorrow? I was already rearranging my furnishings and making plans for my family's future in my home as I observed them through the window. I claimed I was more than ready. They need to understand the consequences of biting the hand that feeds you. I parked across the street from my house at precisely 8:57 a.m. There were already 2 moving trucks, a silver Mercedes I didn't recognize, and Luke's automobile. From the passenger seat, Trinity replied, just on time. Are you prepared? I observed as the Mercedes' new owners, a well-dressed couple in their 40s, got out. Luke shook their hands in greeting. 3, 2, 1. I did a countdown. Mom's SUV screamed around the bend just like it should have. With her face contorted in bewilderment, she jumped out after barely putting it in park. A few seconds later, Rosalind and Dad's vehicle arrived. What's happening? BMW. Mom strode over to Luke and demanded, Who are these individuals? Luke's smile was professional. Good morning. The sale is being handled by me, the realtor. You must be the family sale of the prior renter. Rosalind let out a cry. Which sale? I got out of my vehicle. Trinity is directly behind me. Dad was the first to notice me. Nicole. He rushed over. What on earth is this? This is the new owners taking possession of their property, I remarked gently. Mom's face turned pale. What are you discussing? We got the keys from you. I handed over my extra keys to you. After 5 years in my name, the deeds are now in theirs. I pointed to the pair who were becoming increasingly uneasy as they watched the incident play out. This is not possible. Easton grabbed Rosalind's arm as she surged forward. This is where we're meant to reside. Your current issue is the wedding. I gave Luke the last set of documents. The home has been sold. I'm going to call the cops. Mom struggled to use her phone. Proceed. I dismissed the sales law. I am perfectly entitled to sell my house. Your land. A scarlet flush came across Dad's cheeks. Your family is us. Family, I chuckled. While I'm working 2 jobs to save the house, my family doesn't try to sell it behind my back. I did find the message concerning your conversation with Jerry, Dad. As if I had smacked him, he staggered back. This is crazy. Easton raised his voice, glancing between Rosalind and myself. You owned the house the entire time. Every property tax bill, every repair, every mortgage payment. When your fiancé was sharing selfies from the beach, I looked him in the eyes. To keep a roof over her head, I was putting in extra hours at work. Trinity took the lead, but you, ungrateful little mom, started. I carefully consider what you say next. She cautioned the movers to get to work. The moving team came over as if on cue. Where do we start? The main bedroom. Everything is labeled, I said. Then Rosalind screamed, strangled. Are you just going to give them everything? Not all of it. I took my phone out, displaying the inventory to her. Only the majority of stuff is mine, because I purchased everything. Don't worry, however. I went to the garage and left your old posters. Luke called to my mother, Ms. Burton, who was now sobbing uncontrollably. You must relocate your car. The driveway must be accessible to the trucks. She cried, This isn't happening! How could you have treated your sister the same way you treated me, Nicole? I placed myself first and caught her look. Dad took hold of my arm. Here you listen. Safety. When Luke yelled, 2 cops in uniform got out of their patrol car. I hadn't even seen them come in. Is anything wrong? Dad? Let me go right away. The new owners are eager to start moving in. Luke went on without incident. Everyone who isn't involved in the transfer of property must go. It's not over yet. With mascara streaming down her cheeks, Rosalind spit. Do you believe you have won, Nicole? You just gave this family the finger. I gave her a glance. For the first time in years, I gave her a serious look. My younger sister, who continued to take until she ran out of things to take. No, I answered softly. At last, I stepped outside the explosion radius. Chaos ensued over the following hour. Mom cried. Dad tossed a chair. Before Easton literally dragged her through it all, Rosalind attempted to shut herself in my office. Trinity, Luke, and I watched as movers meticulously packed my life onto trucks. Are you certain you're prepared for everything? As the final box was loaded, Luke inquired. My family was clustered behind their automobiles, giving me looks that varied from skepticism to contempt. On a bright Thursday morning, 5 years of selflessness, deceit, and unspoken animosity culminated. What's humorous to you? For the first time in years, I said as I got into my car. I think I'm breathing. Trinity gave my hand a squeeze. To what location? As I turned on the engine, I took one final glance at the life I was leading, the family I had lost, and the house I had rescued, leaving behind at last. Anywhere except here. I saw Rosalind yelling something I couldn't hear in my rearview mirror as we were leaving. However, I was unable to hear her voice for once. Social media is where the aftermath first appears. Mom's Facebook post portrayed me as a monster who had shattered her sister's ambitions and abused family trust. The comments were full with prayers and thoughts from her country club pals. Did you notice this? Trinity threw her phone on the coffee table in our new apartment? Your mother is accusing you of forging the document. I read the post through. It's funny that she omitted the bit about their initial attempt to sell it. It buzzed on my phone. One more banned number. 12 calls have come in since the morning. Mostly legal advice from Dad's gambling friends. Nicole. We both jumped when there was a knock on the door. It's in the east. Can we have a conversation? Trinity's eyebrows went up. She opened the door when I gave her a nod. Easton didn't look good. There were heavy bags beneath his eyes and wrinkles in his normally immaculate suit. Rosalind has been watching my phone, but I know I should have phoned first. Enter. I pointed to the sofa. Please, coffee. He took a deep seat. Since Thursday, I've been going over everything. The debts, the house, everything. Why was I not informed? Did you think I was real over? Rosalind Trinity brought him a coffee, which he accepted. Most likely not. But now he showed me a text thread on his phone. I've been asked to invest in some by your dad. Yes, of course. Claims to know a man. I'll guess. Jerry, perhaps. How did you 3 years earlier he attempted to sell the house to the same individual? While I was still making mortgage payments, I showed him the note I had discovered. Easton's expression dimmed. Don't you think there's more? A notification appeared on my phone before I could respond? I was tagged in a public post by Rosalind. Some sisters end up becoming great friends. Others turn as cunning snakes that ruin families. Easton muttered, She's been like this all week. The wedding has been postponed. She continues promising to fix things and find a way to make you pay. In relation to payment, Trinity launched an online banking application. This morning, your fiancé attempted to gain access to Nicole's previous accounts. Fortunately, we relocated everything. Easton wrapped his hands around his head. I no longer even recognize her. Or perhaps I didn't know her at all. We all looked up through the window because there was a ruckus outside. Rosalind was running across the parking lot when I saw her, high-end purses that swing like a weapon. How did she? Easton began. Most likely they followed you. I got to my feet. Prepare your phone, Trinity. Before we could close the door, it exploded open. There stood Rosalind. Perfect mascara, in spite of her anger. You bitch who destroys homes. She hurled her drink in my direction. Some expensive iced coffee that left a brown stain on my shirt. Are you happy now everything is damaged by you? Rosalind Easton took the initiative. Put an end to this hold on our future was stolen by her. We were intended to live in that house. I wiped coffee from my face and added, it was never yours. As usual, you simply thought you earned it. We are related. She let out a scream. Oh hi, you owe us. What I lost the money I made throughout those years. I placed my life on hold. Oh, Nicole, poor thing. She gave a smirk. Playing the victim all the time. You believe that you are so ideal and moral. You're only envious, though, because my parents have always loved me more. There was silence in the room. Even Rosalind seemed surprised by what she had said. You're right, I muttered. You were loved more by them. You all ensured that I would never forget it. Karen's voice filled the room as my phone buzzed once again, alerting me to a message from a number I hadn't seen in years. It's your Aunt Nicole. I heard the events. You need to know something about the true reason why everything went wrong. As if they had. I'm Rosalind. The face turned pallid. You dare not speak to her. Why not I moved in closer? She could tell me about the previous times you attempted to take something that wasn't yours, and I'm afraid of that. The tone of Rosalind Easton's voice had changed. What is she discussing? Nothing. As usual, she is lying. Her voice trembled, though. We're heading out immediately. No. Easton did not move. I'd want to hear this. All right. She picked up her luggage. Remain here with this resentful, isolated failure. Check to see if I'm interested. She slammed the door so forcefully that a painting tumbled from the wall as she ran out. Trinity hummed softly. She had a record of everything. That was intense, indeed. Are you all right? I was questioned by Easton. Before turning to my phone where Aunt Karen's message was still waiting, I glanced at my coffee-stained shirt. No, but I will be. I hit the play button on the voicemail. What did they do to you, Nicole? The home wasn't the only issue. This is part of a larger narrative, backwards, in time. The will of your grandma. The initial action. They have a lot of experience with this game. When you're prepared to face the reality, give me a call. My eyes locked with Trinity's. Next is Easton's. The air changed something, similar to the time before a storm. Are you prepared to delve further? Trinity inquired. I kept Karen's number handy. It's time to see what more they have been concealing. The residence of Aunt Karen was just as I had recalled. On the porch of a little blue home are wind chimes. The family cut her off when I was 12, so I hadn't come here since. You arrived. Before I could knock, she opened the door. Her eyes were as bright as ever, but her hair had become silver with age. I doubted you would. Trinity returned to the car after giving me a squeeze. In 2 hours, I'll come get you. I followed Karen to her kitchen where a folder full of papers was waiting on the table. Tea, let's not engage in small conversation. I took a seat. This has to do with Grandma's will. Still, she poured 2 cups. Did your mother never explain to you why I stopped attending family events? According to Mom, you had a financial argument. Cash. Karen gave a sour laugh. 3 months before to Mom's passing, I discovered them attempting to falsify her signature on property transfer forms. My hands began to shake. What? The home. You were meant to receive your house instantly. Mom was aware of Marvin's gambling habits, regarding his facilitation. She wished to keep you safe. She produced a yellow sheet of paper. This is Will's original form. After they destroyed the official copy, I retained a copy. I read it twice. There was my name, as clear as day, the property's sole inheritor. Karen went on, they killed the will. Rewrote everything using Jerry, their lawyer friend. The same Jerry. Dad had made an attempt to sell. The pieces began to fit together, but without my signature, they were unable to transfer the deed. Slowly, I said. They needed me to keep it from going into foreclosure because of this. In order to coerce you into signing it later, they needed it in my name first. Karen nodded. They've been playing this game for years, setting up Roslyn as the golden child, making you feel worthless, indebted, the perfect scapegoat. My voice sounded distant, always trying to earn their love. You weren't the black sheep, Nicole. You were the sacrifice. My phone buzzed, a text from Easton. Found something in Rollins' email. Old messages about the house. You need to see this. There's more. Karen pulled out another document. 2 years ago, your mother tried to add Rollin's name to the deed while you were still paying the mortgage. How do you know all this? I work at the county records office. She smiled grimly. They didn't know that when they tried to file the paperwork. Another text from Easton. She knew about everything. The will, the forgery attempts. She helped them all this time. I whispered. Every extra shift. Every missed opportunity. It was never going to be enough, was it? They designed it that way. Karen reached across the table. You weren't failing them, Nicole. They were failing you. My phone kept buzzing. Trinity had sent a link to a local community forum where Mom was playing the victim card. Heartbroken mother seeks prayers. Eldest daughter betrays family trust. I have to do something, I said. They can't just get away with this. What are you thinking? I looked at the paperwork sprawled across the table. Evidence of years of manipulation, fraud attempts. Calculated abuse. The truth. I stated all of it. It'll ruin them. They wrecked themselves. I started gathering the documents. I'm just going to make sure everyone knows it. Karen smiled the same smile I'd seen in old photos of my grandmother. There's one more thing you should know. Your mother and Roslyn. They tried this before. What do you mean? She opened up an old news story on her iPad. Do you recall your cousin Sarah? 10 years ago, she had a mental breakdown. I looked at the headline. A local lady kills herself following a family property dispute. They took her there, Karen muttered. The same technique, the same pattern. She just lacked the strength to defend herself. I balled my hands into fists. Send me everything. How will you respond? I thought of Roslyn. Smug face, Mom's fake tears, Dad's dismissive anger about years of gaslighting and guilt trips and calculated cruelty. I'm going to make sure Surrogate gets justice too. I got to my feet and I know just where to begin. I was given a last envelope by Karen. You received a letter from your grandmother. She was aware of their plans. When you're ready, read it. Outside. Trinity was waiting in the car. Are you all right? You look like you've seen a ghost. More like a few. I presented the papers to her. Give Easton a call. Ask Luke if he knows of a good lawyer and invite him to meet us at the apartment. Why Sarah was on my mind. Regarding the will. About years of planned abuse disguised as affection within the family. Because it's time to reveal the true story. I knew exactly who I should send my email to first when I took out my phone and opened it. It was a straightforward topic line. To the Never Was family. The automobile was started by Trinity. Are you certain about this? The proof in my lap at the future extending out in front of me, finally free of their shadows, caught my attention as I glanced at Karen standing in the doorway. Watch me. The country club ballroom filled with chatter. What should have been Roslyn wedding rehearsal dinner had become a family support gathering. Mom's attempt to salvage face after everything fell apart. I hadn't intended to come, but when Easton texted that Roslyn was preparing to announce a fresh beginning at the family estate, I knew I couldn't miss it. Are you ready? Trinity adjusted my blazer as we stepped in. Everyone's staring. I whispered, let them. She laced her arm through mine. They're about to gaze a lot harder. Mom was the first to notice us. Halfway to her lips, her glass of champagne froze. You weren't invited, Nicole. I was, in fact. I held up the invitation from Easton. +1. Dad showed there with a flushed face from drinking. You're displaying some nerve here. I wouldn't miss this, I see. I grinned. Not Roslyn in particular. Big news. Roslyn clinked her glass for attention as though she had been called. Her expression was jubilant despite her weight loss. We appreciate everyone's presence in helping our family through this time of change. There was a sympathetic murmur from the crowd. Well, things have been difficult lately, she said, giving me a fierce look. I'm overjoyed to report that Daddy has managed to repurchase our family house. This morning, our offer was accepted by the new owners. There was a clatter. Dramatic tears were brushed away by Mom. That's intriguing. I spoke loudly. The room fell quiet since yesterday the new owner signed a non-transfer agreement. But Roslyn's glass trembled. For at least 5 years, they are unable to sell. I took my phone out. Oh, and Jerry, my dad, phoned. He instructed me to inform you that the casino is still awaiting payment. Dad's face turned pale. Did you speak with Jerry? We had a fantastic chat regarding faked paperwork and unlawful property transactions. I looked at Mom. Do we also need to notify everyone about Cousin Sarah? Don't you dare. Mom gave a hiss. How about Sarah? From the throng, someone called. Nothing. Rosalind hurried on. Like usual, she's lying, am I? I had emails, so I linked my phone to the presentation screen in the room. Bank documents and the original will. Even the documents they attempted to use to transfer the deed behind my back were destroyed. Documents flooded the screen. As individuals began reading, gasps echoed across the assembly. Switch that off. Easton halted Dad's attempt for the controls. They ought to see, he added softly. Everyone ought to see that you assisted them. I informed Rosalind that you were aware of everything, including Sarah. You assisted them as you watched them tear me apart for years. I didn't, she began. Examine your son's emails. I navigate to a different screen. Nicole is working late again, Mom. Excellent. It's time to file the documents. Another gulp. Someone's phone started recording. Everything is being ruined by you. Once more, Rosalind shouted. No, I turned to the audience. They destroyed a cousin, a sister, and a daughter. They falsified records, committed deception, drove Sarah to end her life. Lies. Mom let out a cry. Where is your family? Family, I chuckled. Let me explain the concept of family. I explained everything over the following 5 minutes. The attempts at fraud and deception. The tale of Sarah. The fear of the throng increased with each revelation. We've informed the cops. I was done. The falsified documents are of special interest to the DA. Additionally, the case of Sarah is being reopened. Dad sank back in a chair. Black rivers poured out of Mom's mascara. Like a security deposit, you all bet on me. My voice echoed through the quiet room as I spoke. I simply cashed out. Trinity intervened when Rosalind lunged at me. Charges of assault if you touch her. When this isn't over, join the scam. Rosalind spat. It is, in fact. Eastern took a step forward. I've told the cops just about everything. Whispers followed like smoke as the throng began to move toward the exits. Mom's pals from the country club were eager to go. This family has been devastated by you. Mom cried. No! I unplugged my phone. Years ago, you did that. I simply want to make sure that everyone understands why. I heard Rosalind's final frantic cry as Trinity and I left. I'll make you pay for this. But her voice carried no force now. The reality had torn it away. Outside, Karen was waiting in her car. How'd it go? I showed her the footage someone had previously placed online. This is something they will never get over. Excellent. She gave my hand a squeeze. Sarah would be pleased. Messages rang on my phone. Assistance from random viewers of the video, making connections amongst old pals from years ago. Reporters are requesting feedback. Now, what Trinity inquired. Through the glass, I observed the real-time breakdown of my family's well-crafted facade. In a single night, years of falsehoods were exposed. I grinned now. Let karma finish now. The beginning of truth. While Trinity and I went over refurbishment plans, the local news played softly in my new workplace. Due in part to the viral tale of how I had salvaged and sold my own property, our home repair business was flourishing. Trinity checked her phone and stated, another email from a reporter. They want to know if you will discuss the plea agreement. Remove it. My attention was on the plans. We've closed that chapter. I was drawn to the voice of the news anchor. Marvin, a local businessman, may spend up to 5 years in prison for forgery and fraud. Next week, his daughter Roslyn and wife Mary will be sentenced. Trinity turned it down. The sentence is not being watched by you. Karen is pursuing Sarah. On the blueprint, I drew a line. That's sufficient. It buzzed on my phone. Easton. Following the affair, he had established his own financial consultancy business. Hello, have a moment. You ought to meet someone. Customer, better. The daughter of Sarah. She is now 18. Just learned the truth about what actually occurred. Wishes to express gratitude. I froze my fingers over the blueprints. I was unaware that she had. Most folks didn't either. She was shielded from the entire situation by her adoptive parents. However, she looked into it after seeing the video. A notice appeared. Rosalind tried to enter my accounts once again. She refused to give up even if it meant going to jail. I responded, send her by the office. I'll find time. I hung up and went down to the window. Our most recent project involved building affordable homes out of an abandoned factory. I wish I had a location like that when I was fighting to keep that house together. My door was knocked on by Luke. Have you found the desired property listings? Regards. I grabbed the folder. How is the market doing? The timing is intriguing. He smiled. Your former residence was just advertised once more. Owners are relocating abroad. I'll guess. Roslyn is attempting to purchase it using a fictitious business. This month's third effort. He took a seat. Doesn't she ever learn? Not one of them did. I showed him an email on my laptop. From her sister's spare room, Mom continues to send guilt trips every day. Dad is trying to get investors for his jail return idea. Trinity gave a snort. They are constant, at least. Sarah's eyes met those of a young woman barely 18 who came in my doorway. Nicole, miss. My name is Hannah. My birth mother was Sarah. There was silence in the room. I got to my feet. Please come in. She held a folder in her hand. These were in my adoption documents. My mother's letters describing what they did to her. How about you? I made an effort to correct it. For her, I whispered quietly. Did you? Hannah grinned, despite her tears. They took the trust fund from her, the one that was utilized for the residence. It has been retrieved. Now my college is covered, just how she desired. Luke and Trinity slipped out, leaving us by ourselves. Additionally, I have something for you. I took out an envelope, the one I got from Karen. This letter was written by your grandma, the authentic one, not the one that they had her write. Hannah accepted it with trembling hands. Are you going to read it with me? Together, we sat and read the final honest words of a lady who had sought to shield us both from the lies. Nicole, my darling, it started. They have already attempted to seize everything if you are reading this. But keep in mind that homes may be rebuilt. Families are selectable. And the truth eventually comes to light no matter how long it has been hidden. Once more, my phone buzzed. Karen Roslyn texted me once her punishment was over. 5 years. Mary received 3. Are they still accusing you? I presented the message to Hannah. She took hold of my hand. Is the pain still there every day less? I surveyed my workspace, taking in the life I had created from the ashes of their treachery. They believed that by breaking me, they could better control me. It made me impossible to shatter again instead. Outside my window, Hannah said, Mom would be proud of both of us. A fresh wall was constructed by the construction workers against the sky below. The sun shone on our corporate sign. Renovations in Phoenix are creating fresh starts. Do you want coffee? Hannah was asked. I know a few tales about your mother. Not their versions, but the genuine ones. She wiped her tears and nodded. That would be nice. Trinity yelled after me as we left. How am I supposed to handle these? She displayed a pile of letters. The family is making more guilt trips. There was no more of that. Sarah, Hannah, Truth, repercussions, and the family we select were all on my mind. Recycle them. I said we're constructing something better now. Hannah grinned. Sarah. Bright, unwavering smile. We left the darkness where they belonged and moved into the brightness together. Behind us. Story 3. I was rejected by my family since I chose to purchase a van home rather than contribute to my brother's master's degree. Do not identify as our daughter. According to my mother, my brother arrived at my vehicle 3 days later. I was rendered stunned by what transpired next. I was forced to phone the police. Hello, this is Helena. Up until last week, I considered myself to be a competent adult at the age of 24. The ceiling fan in my 300-square-foot studio produces that menacing clicking sound you hear in horror movies just before the electricity goes out. I hardly ever sleep since I work full-time as a billing assistant and study web design part-time at night. However, I had a strategy. A modest, low-key strategy devoid of confetti or balloons. All I have is a slow-burning ambition of leaving my expensive renting and eventually owning something that was rightfully mine. For 3 years in a row, I had saved $19,000 and earned $19,000 by avoiding pleasant activities, cutting coupons, and foregoing vacations. My parents were aware of it. Roger, my older brother, did the same. It was Sunday supper, as usual that evening. Something from the freezer that looked like it had lost a battle was warmed by Dad. Mom uncorked her second Riesling bottle, as he explained that true leadership starts in middle management. Roger was already 2 drinks deep, as if it were divinely inspired wisdom. I sat silently, mentally practicing the sentence. I purchased a vehicle. I purchased a vehicle. I purchased a vehicle, when Dad finally inquired. What's new with you then? I inhaled deeply and proceeded. Yes, I did purchase anything. Mom looked up. A van, huh? The hush was sudden and abrupt. Roger's eyebrows went up. For example, when camping, not to occupy. Dad scowled. What was the amount you spent? I said 19 grand. Nearly all of my funds. Mom did laugh. You're kidding. I'm not. I had been searching for some time. It's in fair condition. I'm going to convert it. Roger blinked. He was homeless for $19,000. It isn't. I caught myself. That isn't it. All I have to do is save money on rent till I graduate. Dad scowled. And you did this without first speaking to us. I own the money. Mom reclined in her seat. We believed you were putting money down for something worthwhile. I gave a shrug. This is true. Roger's head was already wobbling. And now I'm trying to save money for graduate school. You had the opportunity to assist. You purchased a rust bucket instead. I was unaware that I was obligated by law to sponsor your CV. He doesn't mean that. Mom cut in. We've always been there for one another. Families operate in this manner. Funny, I remarked. It didn't go both ways as I recall. Don't begin. Dad forewarned. I simply sat there and swallowed it instead. Roger gave a sound that sounded like laughter. Look, you could have just said that you did not want to be on the squad. I don't believe that living on the cheap is a personal betrayal. Mom yelled, You didn't just make a bad financial choice. We all looked silly because of you. I was really taken aback by that one. Really, really. She said, what are people meant to believe? Are we unable to prevent our daughter from being homeless? It's not a sidewalk, it's a vehicle. The point isn't that. I didn't respond. Roger's whining twisted. I mean, this will also damage my reputation. You are aware of how close-knit the financial community is. Wow, I said. I mean, this isn't even about me anymore. Dad looked at me for a long time. Your wager was successful. I created a betting website. From the plywood, I mumbled. There is storage below it. No one chuckled. We simply feel let down, Mom remarked in a flat, quiet voice. You could have contributed to something greater. However you made this decision, I hoped you would appreciate my effort. Silently, I said. Roger got up. Helena, we all have to give up something. Mom didn't even look at me when she said it, so perhaps it's time you realized that. Don't call yourself our daughter if you want to live in a van and be homeless. Silence fell. I kind of waited for her to retract it, or at least take a peek at me. Dad, Roger, anyone? It was a joke to say that it wasn't her intention. However, no one spoke. Most likely it lasted 5 seconds. It seemed like a year. Slowly I nodded. Correct. I only stated that. No sarcasm, no speech. Perfect. After that, I grabbed my coat and walked out. There was no drama. No one followed. All I had to do was snap the door shut behind me. I can't even recall the drive back. I was seated in the van the next thing I knew. The flimsy curtain I attempted to hang had fallen drooping as if it gave out in the middle, and the mattress was still leaning against the wall. I took a seat on the ground. Splinters and chilly metal, no insulation yet. I refrained from crying. I wasn't upset, simply exhausted. In a manner I couldn't quite describe, it was heavy. Perhaps it's strange, but when I was 10, I taped cutout stars to the ceiling of my bedroom because it brought back a random memory. I was assisted by my parents in hanging fairy lights. I recall thinking, wow, they truly care about me. Since then, that memory has been carrying a lot of the burden. Perhaps too much. The worst part, I assumed, would be being disowned. As it happens, that was only the start. I don't recall returning to the van by car. All I can recall is sitting there in the dark with my jacket still zipped and my forehead against the chilly window. Like a movie I'd seen 100 times, but just now I kept playing the supper over and over again. I get it. Don't call yourself our daughter if you want to live in a van and be homeless. That flat, laying so easy. She read it as if it were a weather report. I refrained from crying. It would have been too obvious. I sat there wondering how someone could be so deeply offended by such a few sentences. What's the worst? I didn't see it coming. I honestly assumed mistakenly maybe that they'd be a bit startled, maybe even uncomfortable with my choice. The proud, in their way. I wasn't asking for balloons or a procession. I just hoped they'd recognize the work that I'd spared, that I was planning for something, that I was attempting to create a life. But instead, I got wiped. And maybe if that had been the only thing, just the meal, just the statement, I'd still be here in a confused fog trying to rationalize it. But the reality is, this didn't come out of nowhere. I am 6 years younger than my brother Roger. My parents claim that he is their family's investment property. A legacy, a sure return. He was prearranged. No, I wasn't. I thought we were close when I was younger. Occasionally, when his buddies were around, he allowed me to accompany them. That seemed significant to me. However, I believe that even in those days, I was more of a mascot than a sister. Roger always came first, and not in a corny manner. Oh, he gets everything first since he's older. In other words, everything literally goes to Roger. They paid for tutors, preparatory classes, and networking events, and they assisted him in getting into his ideal school. When he attended Columbia to study finance. When I was in high school, I acquired a part-time job and gave half of my income to his books and rail passes since my mom said it was a family effort. My dad said, "You'll have more options," when I inquired about saving for my own future. "Roger will assist you once he's set up." He didn't. He hasn't yet. However, each time I brought it up, I received a reminder to exercise patience. "Helena, he's under a lot of strain. Your turn will come." It was my time to enroll in a community college course which I paid for each month. No laptop was given to me. A dusty desktop that I found on Craigslist was utilized. My mother told me it was horrible timing when I asked if they would assist me with my tuition, even if it was only a little. "Roger just received a down payment from us." As if there had been a weather delay, she remarked, "We will get back to you." All my life, it has been the trend. They presented it all as a group decision, a shared pot. If we all pitch in now, Roger can prosper. Later on, we all gain from it, but eventually turned into a ghost. A term that keeps me silent. I was convinced for years, which is what kills me. I thought I was benefiting from aiding him, that we worked as a group, that if I simply continued to work, smile, and bear the burden, after a while they turn around and state, "Hey Helena, now is your turn." They didn't. They didn't assist me with moving boxes when I moved into my little studio. They did not contribute to the deposit. When my mother saw it, she genuinely scowled and remarked, "Well, you chose this." Indeed, I did, as there was no other option available to me. The hand-me-downs weren't even given to me. Roger relocated to a posh apartment with a gym. Dad sent me a passive-aggressive text suggesting that furnishing your own area adds individuality, and I took the folding chair from our garage. It's crazy how long I continued to hope what that small voice was saying. Perhaps they will change their minds. At first, you aren't even aware of it, but it keeps you vulnerable and causes you to doubt yourself. And that tenderness. They put it to use. Every group text, every family meal. Some variation of "we're all in this together" was always present. I was never in it, though. I was in orbit around it. For a while, I believed that I was the quiet one, the trustworthy one, and the one who didn't want for anything. However, I now believe that I just learned how to occupy less space. It's similar to that one memory I never let go of. I made these paper stars when I was 10 years old and used them to decorate my room. In fact, my dad helped me tape them up when he passed by. My mother plugged in the string lights she brought in. For a moment, we all sat there and it felt cozy and appropriate. I clung to that as evidence. They do love me, you see. They were helpful to me. They noticed me. I'm not so sure now, though. Perhaps I have been misremembering it. Or perhaps I filled in the blanks because I really wanted to. Perhaps they assisted out of duty or boredom, or because I was the only way they could release their energy that day and Roger wasn't home. I kept thinking that perhaps they would recall that moment when I told them about the van. They could lend a hand once more, or at least be happy. Rather, they referred to it as a shame, error, and an embarrassment. And when Mom claimed I wasn't their daughter anymore, I guess some part of me, some childish part, hoped for someone to say she didn't mean it. For someone to take it back. They didn't. So here I am in a car that still smells like packing foam and hope attempting to detangle a family that only ever saw me when it was convenient. The toughest thing about understanding you were never the favorite isn't the unfairness. It's the loneliness. You start doubting every embrace, every smile, every good phrase. Was it genuine or just part of the script to keep you useful? To keep you involved in someone else's climb? Sometimes I catch myself still expecting they'll call, that someone would admit we were incorrect. We see you now, but ultimately I simply want serenity. A peaceful area of the earth that is exclusively mine. Not borrowed, Not given a job, not given up for the aspirations of others. The van is just that. Not a revolt, not an emergency. It was just a little obstinate act of creating something for myself. Something that doesn't require my explanation. Something for which I need no apology. Something I own. And it's more than they ever offered me, even if it's only 4 wheels and a wooden bed frame at the moment. That night, I didn't abandon my family. They released me. They'll never acknowledge that aspect. Thursday began strangely quiet. It's like the eye of a hurricane, the type of serenity you can't trust. Or the moment you start telling yourself you forgot to attach the file 15 minutes after turning in your final assignment. Someone knocked on the rear door of the van when I was in the middle of scraping dry caulk off a window frame. There was no need for me to look. Nobody else knocks as though they're due money. He was there when I slid the door open. Roger. The jacket was good crisp and buttoned down. The face was a mix of smug certainty and sorrow. "Hey, do you have a moment?" he said. I should have declined, but I chose not to. I moved out of the way. He surveyed the area as though he were walking into a museum display. "Whoa, you've been rather busy." I didn't answer. He gestured toward the little bench I had made out of foam and leftover wood. "May I take a seat?" I gave a shrug. He took a seat. I remained upright. Mom's words have been on my mind. He began to discuss disowning you. That was severe. I arched an eyebrow. That's all. He let out a sigh. All right. And everything went out of control. You've always been the one we could rely on, even though I know I've asked for a lot over the years. Once more that word, count. He answered hastily. I came to ask for nothing. I wanted to let you know that you were correct to take care of yourself. And this. He pointed to the van. Although it's different, it's intelligent. No rent, minimalist. It's kind of awesome. I wanted to buy it, but I didn't. I accepted his offer to assist in completing the installation of the second curtain rod. Like that one time we helped you decorate your room, he said. And I grinned foolish me. He tightened some bolts, stayed for about 30 minutes, and joked that I ought to make a van life video for his fans. After checking the time, I announced that I had to head out for my shift. I could remain. He extended an offer. The instructions are taped up in your possession. I'll complete the shelf you began. My stomach churned, but I wanted to think it was true. I gave the keys to him. When you're done, lock up. He seemed to mean it when he nodded. I saw it before I even got out of the car when I returned. The door was ajar. Only a bit. Only enough to chill the back of my neck. It was a disaster inside. Not the sort of mess that results from being clumsy. No, oops, I spilled paint kind. The mattress was cut, foam ripped, and spilled over the floor. The seat was pulled from the wall. My storage containers were turned out. Dumped, kicked. The curtain rod we hung together bent in half, and the stench acrid like chemical cleanser and something worse. I stood at the doorway for a long time. Long enough for one painful idea at a time, the reality to seep in. It was no coincidence. There was no break-in. I gave him a call. It took 4 rings before he picked up, as casual as ever. Hello, what is going on? The last person in the van was you. Yes, I did lock myself in. Why, Roger? Everything has been destroyed. Another silence followed by harsh, low laughing. Oh, that. Come on, Helena, please. Did you really believe that I was on board with this circus? You stated. To get your permission, I stated what you needed to hear. I was unable to talk. You ought to give me thanks, he continued. I did you a favor, really. Do you believe that living in a van gives you an air of independence? You appear unsteady as a result. I tightened my jaw. My house was ruined by you. That was not a house. It was an impending publicity catastrophe. You make us all seem like garbage and you live in that monstrosity. What happens if someone from my company learns? Or a customer of Mom's? I tried not to scream as I closed my eyes. Look, he responded. I understand. This was what you wanted to prove. It was humiliating. You ought to be happy that I intervened before you destroyed your own life. He hung up after that. Holding the phone as if it might apologize, I stood there for a whole minute. He didn't. The wind shaking the bent paneling in my breath was the only sound. quick and shallow. I don't recall tidying up, flashes only. I was trying not to cry when I discovered my web design textbook soaked through tearing open trash bags and removing wet insulation from corners. I did not give my parents a call. Why would it matter? They wouldn't accept my story. They would, or worse, they would also concur with him. I did, however, launch my web browser. That's when I realized something Roger was unaware of. I parked the van in the same lot beneath the same light post each night. The old municipal building next to it. The security camera-equipped one. Not to be safe. Not at all. I simply didn't want to risk anything. I had what I needed in an instant. Obtaining the video wasn't difficult. It turns out that the municipal office clerk doesn't ask many follow-up questions when you tell them that your brother destroyed your van and that you have a timestamp and a security post badge number. I completed a form. After a whole day of waiting, it finally appeared. Roger enters, stays for almost an hour, and then leaves like a man who just finished putting out the garbage in this grainy, high-angle video. The rubbish, however, was my life. That next day, I took the video to the police. The cop who was viewing the footage remained silent. Roger just jotted down some notes and nodded at the places where he yanked down the improvised shelf and kicked down one of the cabinet doors. I was really proud of it. Vandalism. He stated that may be criminal mischief. Do you wish to file charges? I blinked. Is it possible not to? He gave a little smirk. Some individuals dislike bringing charges against their relatives. I gazed at the display. Roger walked on my string lights as if they were a personal slight. I believe he relinquished that title. Documents were submitted. The case was opened. At that point, the actual circus began. My parents didn't find out for approximately 48 hours. My mom texted me, "Call me now, family," after calling me 11 times in a row, so I knew. The final word was capitalized, as if it were a hostage scenario. She phoned me again when I didn't answer. At last, I answered call 13. Her voice sounded angry and piercing. "How could you harm your brother in this way?" I chuckled. Not a true laugh. When you're at a loss for things to digest, one of those silent, empty ones sneaks out. My vehicle was smashed by him. "He ruined my house," I replied. "Helena, you live in a van. For it, you disown me." "Do you recall?" He disregarded that. "Your urgent charges. Are you aware of the potential consequences for his future? He's already on leave while they look into it, as far as I know. A criminal record is given to him. Therefore, he ought not to have damaged someone's property." Calmly, I said, "There are repercussions for actions. I assumed you all enjoyed giving classes." That was not warmly received. Then Dad called. Then Roger himself, who somehow managed to play the victim and attack me in the same sentence in a 3-minute voicemail. Something about how I set him up, how I deceived him. How a pile of wood on wheels was destroying his future because of me. I didn't answer. Not to any of them. The emails then arrived. Suddenly, family members I hadn't spoken to in years had strong opinions and seemed to be pursuing legal action against your brother for calling you unstable before destroying you. Your house is too far away. Blood really is thicker than justice, according to one email. I wasn't sure if I should frame it or laugh. 2 weeks later, the hearing took place. Roger arrived wearing a suit that was probably more expensive than anything I had saved. He never gave me a glance. Simply looked straight ahead as if my presence would tarnish his resume. It didn't take long for the judge. The video was unambiguous. The destruction was widespread. He was mandated to make amends. It costs $18.70 overall. Additionally, because this was not his first outburst of entitlement, it appears that there was an incident at work where HR had been buried. He was put on probation. After a week, my aunt sent me a message that she had heard from others. Roger had discreetly withdrawn his admission. According to her, they are unable to accept students who are on probation or have ongoing charges. He's inconsolable. I didn't answer. I simply gazed at the text. It was finished. The van has vanished. He gave it up for the future. Also gone. I purchased a new vehicle with the reparation funds, one with a functional heater, proper cabinets, and insulation. I came into a mechanic who had previously made furniture, and we created a small 4-wheeled bit of tranquility together. I had completed my web design certificate by the time the seasons changed. I accepted a position with a little organization that didn't care where I resided as long as I had access to Wi-Fi. I parked the van on the edge of a peaceful field with weed-like wildflowers and an apologetic sunrise coming in through the rear window. I discovered others who were similar to me, people who are quiet, those who didn't conform to the norm, those who required breathing room. Some lived in vehicles while others lived in modest homes. They all had tales to tell. We passed a dented thermos of cocoa around a fire one evening, and I told mine without crying. I didn't have to. Though not frequently, I did occasionally think about my family around the holidays. I nearly texted Roger to find out what job he ended up with after hearing a tune my mom used to hum while cleaning the dishes. 3 years later, my home is still a van. Not for long, but a lot better one. I was able to save sufficient funds for a down payment on a real home. Not big, not ostentatious, but mine. I couldn't have done it if I had continued to rent while awaiting permission. That was never going to happen. I'm moving in next month. My parents are no longer in contact with me. I know they're still informing folks, but not explicitly. I lost contact with the outside world as though I were in the woods barefoot and with a malfunctioning compass. As far as I know, Roger is still employed, not in the financial industry, something forgettable and contract-based. He sought to start again after losing the condo and downsizing. I genuinely hope that aspect works out for him. We haven't talked, though, nor do I believe we ever will. That's what occurred anyhow. He's come this far. I appreciate you listening. Really, I'm not sure. Maybe I went too far. Maybe not far enough. Tell me, please. Drop a remark. And if you appreciate articles like these, press subscribe.